PSD 350 Board of Education meeting to order.
Welcome to the visitors in the gallery.
Any additions or changes to the agenda?
Yeah, two since the publication of the agenda. One would be technology purchases and the other one would be the KASB convention delegate if needed. It would be items 1 and 2 on section C.
All right. Any motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Moved and second to approve the agenda with noted changes. Any discussion? All in favor, right hand. Opposed, same sign. 6-0. Did you have your hand up?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I'm not sure. I know it's gripping, but all right, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Minutes of the October meeting were sent to you via email, or it's on your desktop now.
There's a reminder if you go up to File. And 1 and 2, under where it says Print, 1 and 2, you can switch back between the supporting documents and
Or when
the agenda. The window.
Bills for payment, budget report, activity fund report are all there.
You do have a purple sheet that was additional bills for payment. One question, Chad, he can't make it tonight, but he did call and ask about, or said he would like to visit about the one on page 3. I just realized a little bit ago I didn't number your pages on your supporting documents. It's the third one on the check register. It'll be page 8, but it's up here on the projector screen there. The landmark architect engineering fee for $22.71. That was an old bill that never got paid. They sent the bill and had to call them to say, "What are we paying for?" This was Dr. Kenworthy had hired some folks to come out and go over the library air conditioning and heating system and provide recommendations on what we can do there. So I had to call the engineer and get the report because I didn't have it. I didn't know, maybe in the file somewhere, but provided some recommendations anywhere from just replacing the condensers to redoing the entire system to be more efficient. So.
How long ago have they done that?
March.
We talked about that, and what was it to replace this?
These were estimates. The cheapest of the estimates, just to do, the bare minimum, 60 to 75,000, and then up to 450,000 to replace the entire system. Be a system where the rooms would share air. You'd have fans in the ductwork where, if one room is cooler than another, rather than pulling air from the air conditioner, just pull it from one room to the other. A little bit about some of that, but anyway, that's what that bill is for. Something we'll have to discuss with our capital improvements. And I mentioned in the note, if you have questions, it's helpful if you tell me ahead of time. That doesn't mean I'm opposed to questions now. I just want to have a good answer for you. Sometimes I don't remember what the bill was for. And if you can give me a heads up, that's helpful, and I can have a better answer for you. That way I don't have to get back to you later. But,
What is the Autodesk permit?
that's for the CAD program, the drafting program.
Oh, I didn't even know we still had it.
Licensing fee on that. It's probably one of the most expensive.
Yeah.
They protect that like you would believe.
Mr. President, I move the board approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise right hand. Opposed, same sign. 6-0. First business item is the suburban sale bid opening. You have 3 bids.
I do. Let me open them. Bid number 1, Richard Blakesley, $750. J&J Automotive bid 50196.
Blue Book? Is that Blue Book purchase?
I think that's the yellow book.
Like,
And this is bid number 3, John Regal, 752. So I have a 750, a 752, and a 50196.
I vote for 752.
I'd entertain a motion to approve or reject.
I move we approve the 752 bid, John Regal.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the sale of Suburban to the bidder of John Regal at the price of $752. Any further discussion? All in favor, right hand. Opposed, same sign. 6-0. Okay, next item is facilities use.
The prom parents group is having their tournament on the 15th and 16th of December. The policy states that the board principal approves the use and coordinates that. And then there's a schedule of fees in your packet there on what we charge each group. It's my understanding past practice has been to waive that. It involves our kids. It's a fundraiser for the prom and all that. So my recommendation would be to waive those fees for that group to hold that tournament.
Mr. President, I move the board approve the waiver of the fees for the prom party basketball tournament.
Do we,
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve this with waiving the fees. My question is, do we know exactly what rooms they use, or do they just come and just use the facilities and we have to clean up afterwards? Or, in other words, I'd like a little bit of management on our part, and, you know, for care of the facilities.
Right.
Have we had any issues in the past, and those kind of things?
Okay.
I know that you probably wouldn't know
Right.
those kind of things, but it'd be nice for Jen.
Restrooms and kitchen
Yeah.
and
Well, yeah, the rest
Both
Gym.
gyms and restrooms, both ends.
Yeah, my classrooms.
Locker rooms,
The what?
locker rooms, basketballs, I mean, anything.
Cindy's shaking her head no over there.
Just
think they use locker rooms.
no locker rooms.
They usually come dressed and
Yeah.
run in.
Okay.
Probably the kitchen and the
Concession.
gyms.
Yeah, the concession area, and then both gyms and the restrooms.
I don't think there's ever been a problem.
Okay. It's always good to ask.
Been doing it a long time. Since
Yeah, I
my
know.
kids.
Every time I've been there, I just appreciate how kids are in there doing the work.
Sometimes prom parents leave it cleaner than what they saw.
You know, that's the good policy to have, because it makes it easy for us to prove that. It's good to hear that. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, right hand, pose same sign. 6-0. Credit card policy?
We could not find a formal policy for credit card use. So Julianne put together this policy based on some others that we have seen. It's really just, a lot of it just our practices that we have in place in a more formal arrangement. We have the 3 credit cards in the 3 administrators' names. They're housed in the district office. They are checked out through the district office. And we have this checkout sheet. We can, if we have a question about something, we can go back and see, we didn't have a PO for this. This was on the bill, who had it. So there should be a PO, a purchase order for every purchase that happens anyway. Julianne, do you want to highlight anything in here?
Which is pretty basic.
Okay. So this would be something that anybody that has authority to use the card, any of the teachers, typically online purchases, it's convenient to use. We will do those in the central office. Mainly used for travel, times when writing a check isn't a feasible option. So, sorry.
Does this pretty much follow the policy that the auditors like? Have you checked the auditors on that?
I did not, and I can run it by the auditors, but it's drafted from a KASB policy, so I think we should be pretty safe.
Okay. Well, I know that a lot of, like if you go to a conference someplace and stay overnight, they won't even take a personal check. They all by credit card. So,
It just helps with our accountability here, just to make sure we know that we communicate the expectations to everybody also.
I would entertain a motion to approve the credit card user agreement.
Mr. President, I move we approve the credit card user agreement.
Second?
Yeah.
Okay. Been moved and second to approve the credit card user agreement form policy here. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, right hand. Pose same sign. 6-0. Disposal of excess property.
Okay, one of the things we had on the list was last month we had replaced several of the desktop computers. We had some old refurbished ones that were 8-10 years old. We've got those in now. So we need to dispose of them. Mr. Smith mentioned last time we had a bunch of desktop computers to get rid of. We sold them for $50 a piece, and they sold pretty well. These are older machines. They will not have a monitor come with them. So it would be, if we were to try to sell them, it would be selling the machine with a mouse and a keyboard, no monitor. He would have to go through and clean off those machines and set them up to be used in order to get any money out of them. He's guessing maybe $20, $25 we could get out of them. I don't feel that's worth his time to go through and do all that, especially when we have the new ones to set up and some other technology things we're trying to get done. I don't think it would be worth the time, so I'm asking that we get rid of those. We'll recycle those. They have a recycling company that'll come out and pick that stuff up, and they use what they can. The parts. Yeah.
Do they have a fee? Because I
Yeah.
know when I've gotten rid of old computers, I had to pay to get rid of
Yeah.
them.
This company does it for free.
Okay.
They'll take the parts and use what they can. And then the other thing is the electronic babies. We're using the Perkins grant funds to purchase new babies for the Family and Consumer Science department, and so we have 6 old ones to get rid of. They're obsolete. All they do is cry. They really don't work other than that. It's like having a real child. But they come with a car seat. My only concern about getting rid of those is selling the car seats. We'd have somebody sign a waiver if they would take the car seat that you're not gonna use this for a real car seat. But Mrs. Patterson was wanting to sell those and use the money for a classroom, so.
What good is it for us to sell them?
It would be a toy. Is all.
Well, what I'm saying is to say that you don't have any liabilities, it would be better for us to destroy them. It's like a helmet.
Car seat wise, probably
Yeah.
not baby wise, is that what you're
Right, I'm
getting
saying
at?
if someone takes
Yeah.
it and it ends up in an accident, even though they signed paper,
But
We
crying
could
baby can
get
get
babies.
cool toys, this
Yeah.
little girl.
I
I
worry,
don't know.
the seats I think ought to be destroyed.
I can sure do that.
I mean, that's my feeling, because of liability issues.
Are they that much like a real car seat?
Yeah, it's a real car seat.
Oh. It was manufactured to be
Yeah.
a real car seat, it's just,
Yeah.
okay.
A baby carrier, with, you know, like a newborn infant car seat with
Yeah.
strap.
It doesn't
in.
have the base, now
I don't
the
think
carriers
it's-
have the
I
base
didn't
that
look
it
at 'em
snaps
real close.
into. I don't think
I
these,
doubt
they're
it
just
has
carry
that, yeah.
things, so. But there would be somebody that would try it probably. I kinda agree, we need to get rid of the carrier and just sell the babies.
Yeah.
Till some
It's
parent
not
gets
really a
mad.
critical issue. If the board's not comfortable with it, we'll just destroy the things and sell the babies. And they might not even sell.
Sell the babies, I know, I
Sell
wanna
the
be
dolls. Sorry, I should reword that.
We need to,
Use as toys as the elementary or in the classroom, are they?
they're annoying.
Well,
I don't think Mrs. Seekis wants them in her hallway, because they're annoying.
Yeah.
take the batteries out.
We've had one
See,
at
I'm
our house, and
blissfully
they're not much
oblivious to
fun.
doll stuff in my house.
I entertain a motion of some kind.
I would I move to have Mrs. Patterson sell the electronic babies, but not the car seats.
And computers?
Huh?
How about the computers?
Oh,
Throw that
Do you
in the motion.
include that in your motion?
and,
Disposal of the
yeah, dispose of the computers
recommended.
as our superintendent sees fit.
Everybody clear with the motion?
I'll second that.
Is the secretary clear with the motion? Do I need to restate it? That would dispose of the desktop computers as been presented here this evening and allow the Family and Consumer Science Program to sell the babies but not the car seats. Any discussion? All in favor, right hand. Opposed, same sign. 6-7. Thank you. All right. Library funding is the next.
I have some additional information here for you on the library funding. Last time we talked about this, the board requested more information on the local option budget and the potential there, and the potential for additional funding through the foundation, and see what kind of potential there was there. This is similar to the document you had before, and just updated it a little bit. So you can see about a fourth of the users for the library, students and staff. A little less than half of the total hours of operation are during school hours. Now, it is an educational institution for our kids, even outside of the school day, during the summer and in the evenings. We still use that. The operational costs are not different than we looked at last time. About 3/4 of the funding almost is provided by our district funds. The rest of it comes from the foundation, the city, and the South Central Kansas Library System. I added some information here about the funding imbalance. there were some questions when I discussed this with the library board, that why are we looking at this? Why would we even bother? Well, two main reasons, I think. One is that we collect taxes and fees and get state aid to educate the kids. And we're limited on how much we can collect based on our enrollment. And so there's that one pot of money that the state says we can use to educate the kids. And we're taking some of that money to keep it a public library. And secondly, our enrollment has declined, and our general fund budget over the last 10 years has shrunk by 22%. Seen some of the information about the efficiency study, which I'll bring up a little bit later, but with a smaller budget, it is more important, more critical to be as efficient as we can with those dollars. So, if you compare us to a school district down the road, they're not taking their school district funds to operate a public library. I don't want to say we're competing with neighboring school districts, that's not what it's about, but we should be on a level playing field in that regard. So whether it's right now or 10 years ago, I think the issue is still the same, that we're taking school district funds to make that a public library, to keep it a public library. Now, the right balance is not an easy thing to determine. A typical school might spend $90,000 a year on library services if it's integrated in the school building. Maybe have a librarian, an aide, and then utilities and materials and things. This is not an accurate number, it's a best guess. Probably the better way for our situation would be to determine if we just had this library only for school use. If that were the case, what would that cost us? What would we need to have only to operate it? And then we could determine what costs are above and beyond that. That's probably the best way to determine that. So what do we need to do? We don't have to do anything right now. One of the options is to leave things the way they are. But I think we need to be purposeful about those decisions that we're making and not do things like we've always done it because we've always done it that way, but to be purposeful about those decisions. So some solutions. These are by no means all of the options that exist. Out of all of these, the most complicated one would be creating a new special tax levy. That would require changing the state statute. That would likely require a public vote. That would be a very complicated process. So let's look at these one by one. Increase the LOB, the local option budget authority, to 31%. We base our local option budget, which is also called supplemental general. It's 30% of the general fund, sort of. Down here on the bottom, and we have that also. This is our general fund budget right here, is what we established that. And they recalculate that based on, instead of the $3,838 per student, they base it on years ago when it was $4,433. So they increased this, so it's kind of, it's inflating our local option budget is what it's doing. It's working within the law to make this higher. So this is what we established our local option budget at this year. If it was 31%, you can go up to 31% with an election. So 30% of our budget, here is this, that's what our budget is. We could have had an extra $28,000 based on this year's budget. Now, since our enrollment was higher than what we budgeted, this is what our general fund budget is actually going to be. This is what our local option budget will be calculated on, but we can't go above this. That's what we published. We can't republish that. That has to stay the same. We'll republish our general fund and get this extra revenue. We can't. The local option budget, it stays the same. So the difference here, if this was our real scenario, which it might be next year, this is probably what it would look like next year, about an extra 29,000. Well, those two things, I guess, you look at where we're at with our actual budget, we can't republish that, that's stuck where it's at. What's the potential for next year? So it's an extra $63,000 roughly in 1 year. Now, that wouldn't be every year. You'd probably be looking more like this $29,000 each year from there on out. Okay. Does that make sense on what the local option budget could do?
If we were in a cycle of increasing our enrollment each year, would that be increasing 29,000 a year with the kind of change that we saw this year in enrollment?
Roughly, yeah. Yeah, if we saw that kind of increase.
So that's what.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
That's always helpful. Now, the trouble with local option budget, that's still tied to student enrollment. So that doesn't change the fact that we're talking about that pot of money that's based on student enrollment. We're still using that. But that's one option. Option number 2 I've got here, these are no order of priority or anything. A special mill levy in the school district. There's, if you recall, we visited a little bit about this last meeting. There's 2 school districts in the state that levy a tax for library operation. One is Independence, one is Kansas City, Kansas. They both operate a little bit differently. Independence operates a lot like our rec commission does. We collect a tax in the entire school district for rec commission. We pass that on to them. The rec board takes the money and they do it with it. We don't really have a say in how that money is used other than they present a budget. In Kansas City, Kansas, it's more they collect the tax and operate the public library as a school board. So whether this is really even a feasible option, I don't know, but I think it's something that could be on the table. Let me back up to number 1. You can see how that changes the percentages and the way things are shared out. If we add, I just put 25,000 in just to be conservative instead of the 2963. That amounts to about, it's less than 1 mil district-wide. So that would change the balance of how things are funded. Okay. Sorry, now back to number 2. I just put in a 2 mil levy if we had a special levy. You can see what that would do to the balance of things. Now there could be any number of things possible here. The city, I just put it at 0 because we would be raising enough there. It could maintain that at 3, and maybe the special levy would be a 1 mil or half a mil or something. There's any number of possibilities to do things there. If that makes sense. And down here, this other graph or table, just as an example, what would it look like next year if, 1, we bumped up the capital outlay all the way to 8, and we levied the 2 mil special levy. Again, that's a complicated process to 2. What would our total mill levy look like? Just guesstimating on what the LOB would be. That fluctuates each year. We would be still lower than what we were last year, district-wide. So, just to give you an idea of what might be possible there. Third option, it's city provides more revenue. If we ask the city, the balance isn't right, how can we fund that more? If we ask them to contribute 20 or 50,000 instead of the 18 that they do, the balance looks a little better, but if you notice, that's roughly 10 mils. That's quite an increase for the city, which is the thing that makes the other option with the school district a much more attractive option, I guess, as far as mill levies are concerned, depending on where you live. So our valuation is 43 million, the city's is 5. So 1 mil generates 43,000 and the district generates 5,000 in the city. So the other thing would be increase the contribution from the foundation. The 4th page on your document there, I'm gonna have to pull this up separate here, is the foundation and what we've taken out and what the investment gain and loss is from year to year. There's only been 3 school years that we've taken a disbursement.
I thought we were doing it regularly each year, so that's a surprise to me.
Okay. It was a surprise to me too. I was under the assumption that that was happening each year. Now see, the 50,000 would, for calendar year 2010, would encompass 2 school years. But you can see what the fund has done and the investment gain or loss. There is some potential there.
I think our spending policy for the foundation is typically 4 to 5%. So, in other words, those are considered endowments, and that's what those proceeds, at whatever their spending policy is, 4 to 5%, is what we should be getting each year. I thought that's what the whole purpose of this fund is to do, is to support operations of the library.
Well, I think if you look at this, they have another, we have a library fund, right? And that fund has kept us, it keeps money in, it's a line item. And like it may be, I'm just using my figure, say 75,000. Well, libraries may not get all that library fund of 75,000, they might get 25,000 out of the school budget fund. In other words, so that we just don't have to go down to the foundation and say, write us a check for this amount every year.
It should be clockwork. Whatever the fund is, 4% gets written as a check to the school district every year, varying based on what their actual, the market value of that fund is. So in other words, there may be years where they get 10% return, you're still going to get 4% written to you as a check. There may be years where they have a loss, you still get 4% as your check. That's what endowments do. They provide that kind of a stability.
Yeah, but these aren't endowed.
I believe it should be.
No, I don't think they are.
I can't answer.
If it's not endowed, then the policy is you could spend the whole shebang if you wanted to, and I don't think that's what we want.
Yeah, I'll look at that, see how that is set up. I'll let you know. But you can see in 2008 there was a big hit, and then 2011 wasn't a great year. But there is some potential there.
It's 40,000 a year. I mean, what we're doing, we're not spending it, so we're building principal, which I guess is nice, but at some point, if you're only building principal and you're not getting the benefit of it, and we're at the same time figuring out how are you going to pay the bills, then there's no point in building that principal to indefinitely. I mean, that's what it's there for, is to support operations for the library.
Julianne, can you, I'm going to surprise you with a question here. We didn't take a draw last year.
No, and that was partially my fault because I got busy and just forgot to request it. But when we looked at the balance in the 72 fund at the end of the year, which is what the library operates out of for materials and books, periodicals, movies, that kind of thing.
And that's the budget that we see, right? When the library,
That's the budget that
Christie
you approve at
presents
the
it.
beginning of every year that is separate from the district budget, that Christie comes in and presents. When we looked at that at the end of the year, not only did they have sufficient money, but we had enough money sitting there in that fund to transfer the expenses, the $5,000 or so that had been charged to the general fund back into the 72 fund, and they still had over $25,000 to begin this year with. So Dr. Kenworthy said, since there's that much money in there, we will just leave it alone and not take a drop for this year.
But the 72 fund is what buys things like books and
Correct.
equipment type things. It's not
Right.
what pays for lights or salaries.
No, those all come out of the general fund.
There's no reason that the foundation can't disperse to the general fund of the school.
There's not, just the foundation board would have to authorize it to be approved by the Board of Education before that could take place. The foundation controls it with the Board of Education having final oversight. But they would still have to put forth a recommendation before the board could take action. The board, to my understanding, the board can't just say, this is what we're going to do with education foundation funds. That's the reason there's an education foundation board. It's to provide the checks and balances between the wishes of the people who have donated the money and the school board, so that everything is taken into account before a decision is made.
So one thing maybe to look at is what the structure of that fund agreement is with South Central Community Foundation. That grant or that fund agreement should specify those spending policies and disperse.
Don't believe that is the way that it was set up.
There has to be some type of fund agreement.
I was
When they
thinking
accept funds when they accept funds, they have to set up a contractual fund agreement on how, so that that people that are giving money to them are clear on what the process is. I'm sure there's got to be a fund agreement there somewhere.
Well, I was thinking that you couldn't touch a principal, but you could, what originally started out, but anything above that, there's interest and stuff.
And the fund agreement will specify whether it's truly endowed or not. Because it sounds like there's even some ambiguity here as to whether this is an endowment or it is held there without being bound by the terms of endowment. Is that?
I don't think it's endowed.
I
I'm
don't
almost
either.
99% sure it's not. I think if the Educational Foundation Board said we needed 100,000 tomorrow, we'd get a check for 100,000, well, whenever, we could, a quarter or whatever they write checks of the educational, and then the board approve it, it happened. It's not an endowment, it's just a place to put funds to draw interest. And the CDs that were drawing less than 1%.
And I'm almost certain that President Sparrow is correct in that description, because I believe that we've had this conversation since I've been the clerk. And that was Dr. Kimberly's answer at the time as well.
But it wouldn't hurt to review how funds can be withdrawn from the foundation
Sure.
with South Central. Just have a conversation. And they're under a new director now too, aren't they?
Last I heard, there is no one.
There is
That's a vacancy.
Okay.
Might be tough getting information right now.
They do have a board, so that board person's on
Right. And then the other option, of course, is reducing expenditures for the library. And there's always that option. And then you throw in the other one. All of these would be doing something. The other option would be doing nothing, keeping things the way they are, make adjustments on the other end. Also within number 4 there, increasing the contribution from the foundation would be increasing contributions to the foundation in order to fund the library. Mr. Doran mentioned something like, maybe endowing some separate funds. So that's also an option within that, so. So I'm not looking for a motion. I'm looking for direction from the board on whether I should pursue legal information on options 1 and 2, or would those be off the table? What would be the priority? Let me say this, I plan to attend a city council meeting when they'll allow, just to present this to you, because we've been discussing it, and we're talking about the city's mill levy, and I think it's fair that I have this discussion with them as well.
I guess my priority kind of is 2 things. Number 3, the city, and then 4.
I agree with Sam.
Now, you know, one's not more important than the other, but I, in a way, kind of like to see both things.
I'm not necessarily the 50,000.
Sure.
Right, because, well, I was just looking back here, you know, we got 138 here, and, you know, I was thinking 40 a year, just off the top of my head.
Well, the city guys will have a heart attack if you.
Not the city providing that, but that was the,
Right, with an eye toward what I think right now.
you know, there's a lot of people outside the school district that come over here and use the library. You know, it's county-wide. And kids from other school districts and stuff use it all the time, so can't get anything from that, but,
The only thing is that the city raising their mill levy 10 mills is just astronomical.
well, I don't think that's reasonable. And, you know, my water bill's enough, so that's kind of a dead shot probably, but.
And the reason I just put 50,000 as a, you know, roughly 25% of the library's budget is.
You know, they might be able to squeeze 5,000 more out of there.
Out of
You know,
something,
anything's better than.
yeah.
And it may be that the city could provide more without raising their
Right.
mill levy. I don't
Right.
know the answer to that.
And that's what I would be in favor of.
Something else that I know has been brought up with the city is a special utility rate. You know, I don't know how they feel about that. I know that's been talked about before. For the school.
Okay.
You think the library board would be work to maybe have like a library awareness month where we can just emphasis on contributions, just set a goal of raising so much a year, and you know, I've had 2 people mention that give to the library if they knew that that's where they were going. But I think it needs to come more from the library board that, you know, we're raising money for it goes through the foundation. I'm not good with
yeah.
words on what I want to express here, but if you could work something out where they have their reading, say kids have their reading mill, or someone would, say a kid reads 100 books, someone would kick in $100. You know, I'm just thinking of some incentive to,
That would be more the PR side than it would be more than true raising of significant dollars. But you have to have a balance though. I mean, somehow you have to draw people in to be interested. The PR and and whatever.
I think the thing is
But
to
it's
have
prob-
this discussion with the city, and, because people need to understand, this thing's getting more and more pricey to keep up. And with the tighter squeeze in the budget, it almost seemed like to me since our last meeting that number 2 is more of a practical thing, the way to go. With trying to keep it low, like 0.5%, with trying to get the foundation off to a better start, to utilizing funds from that every year, saying, you know, we're increasing this and maybe over time we can lessen the burden. I like the idea of some type of endowment type of a deal. You know, if you knew you had 40,000 endowed funds that were coming back, it would just ease the burden.
Well, we got it, I think, you're just not, we're not managing it that way. That's what it
Well,
appears to
I
me.
mean, if we would have been spending that money, we wouldn't have that money.
Well, if you'd have been no, that's the definition of endowment. You preserve the principal and the proceed, but we're building, we are building, is what we're
Right.
doing.
But we would have never had this, never had 800,000 if we had been spending and been all 600,000 with a lesser amount.
Right, right. So you have to make the determination of which do you value more, I guess, is the operational contribution or,
I might be way off base, but I don't know that people are gonna be willing to donate a lot if they know that the foundation has that kind of money.
Well, what I'm saying is, what if you got that to $1 million, then so that you could endow, you know, talk with people, get that whole total dollars to $1 million and then endow with $1 million.
you can have an endowment and add to it over time. That could be endowed today and you still build it and build it and build it and build it. It's what community foundations do day in and day out. That's their purpose in life, is to build endowments. You know, we could even spread ourselves out politically too. I mean, we have 2 of these community foundations that cover our region, our county. Golden Belt Community Foundation does the same thing, and I just know that probably keeping interaction with both of them is useful in competing for the kinds of grant dollars that they give out from some of their unrestricted funds. You know, you could, plus, I happen to know that the other one, the Golden Belt Community Foundation is in a matching challenge right now from Kansas Health Foundation, so for every $1 that you build in endowments there, Kansas Health Foundation is matching it. It's either 50 cents or $1 on the dollar. So, I see challenges right now with the kind of political environment we're in as far as taxes, whether you're looking at the state level. I mean, it's getting more and more conservative there in terms of reining in. I mean, I think it'll be very difficult to get a change in state law at this point in time.
I don't think so. The more I think about it. Because 2 things. One is, this is a unique thing. There's only, what, 6 of them in the state? 5 or 6 libraries that are affiliated with school districts. And one, it's an economic impact to our district, whole district. If you took this library away, it'd be an economic thing. So I think that when you look at the management of it, we haven't been funding the library, we've been funding education. And so I really think that, you know, just to tweak it, that legislators would look at that thing and say, hey, that makes sense to have that library the way it is. The way the government's
I
going.
argue with full pride in our library. I'm fully proud of it, fully want to see it succeed and be funded in the future. But it just seems to me that right now we are in an environment where there are legislators that are just absolutely towing the line, no new taxes. And this is going to be perceived, it's going to be scored by the taxpayer type group, you know, those Americans for Prosperity type groups, they're gonna score stuff like this.
Yeah, but it doesn't have anything to
as
do
a
with the
tax
state.
increase, but if it has to be voted on by the state legislature, it is an increase in taxes that was under their, you know, I'm just saying, I perceive it as being an uphill battle politically, and I may be wrong, that's my perception of it.
I think it would be an uphill battle. I do agree with you. Here's what got me to thinking about it anyway. When we established our budget this year, and we're talking about the library funding being a tough thing to deal with, and we're gonna look at cutting things. By the way, we're dropping our mill levy 4 mils. Why can't we just keep our mill levy where it was, where everybody's happy, and we fund what we want to? Well, we can't do that because our budget is based on enrollment. We can't make that choice to say, wait a second, we as a district want this for our community. We want to fund this library the way we want to fund it. We don't want the state telling us we have to spend it on this, and we can't add that extra. That's what got me thinking about this, and got me exploring that, is having that money to fund the library and shared throughout the district, not just within the city, and completely separate from being based on just enrollment. So that, I think, is why it all came up. That's why it all came into my mind, I guess.
You just have to find the right legislative vehicle to get it on where it gets buried.
You
It
just
has
have
to
to
get
have
buried,
a
basically.
sharp individual that's willing to.
And you have to have someone like Mitch Holmes to carry it.
I mean, those kind of people would have to be on board, which I don't see. When I studied with the help of Josh, presenting this information, it made it a lot more palatable to me this evening with the information he presented. I don't know about the rest of you.
Well, didn't you say there's other libraries that's funded like that?
Two others.
Well, why would they have to change the state law for us?
Those two have their own state law. There's one state statute for Kansas City, Kansas, and a separate statute for Independence.
Well, they got it. Why can't small town America get it?
Because there was a different legislature in place 20 years ago when they put them.
It was probably started at that point in time and not started like our
They're
situation.
presented the facts. Facts are facts.
I really wouldn't see why they care, because we'd have to vote for it. I mean, have a
I think
public vote anyway.
presented with the history of what we've been doing with our budget, how we preserve, like we didn't raise the 4 mills. I think you present that kind of information, it makes a no-brainer. Because the long-term effect, if we don't do anything, we've got a bigger battle.
Yeah, and the reason it has to be a separate state laws statute says what school districts can and can't spend money on and what they can and can't collect taxes for. And so to make an exception like the library funding has to be a separate state law. And for whatever reason, when they made that law for Kansas City, Kansas and Independence, they wrote it specifically for their district.
Is it through the state or through the national that they were talking about how much money that you're actually spending on the education in the classroom and with the teachers, on students, and making sure that you are spending your money where it's supposed to be
That's
spent?
the
And
state.
is this gonna get caught up in something like that, where they come in and say, you know, where you were talking about the taxpayer dollars should be into the classroom instead of being in?
And this,
I
I
mean, it'd
think,
be
would
great
actually,
if,
this would actually help that, because library is considered instructional support, not instruction.
but
And is not
would we
counted
have
in
to show that
65.
the students are using it more often than what they are?
No, it would be taken separate. Right now, what the dollars that we spend here count as instructional support. If that was paid through a separate tax levy, it would be separate from the fund that would be looked at as instruction or support or anything. It would just be separate. Just like recreation, that's not counted in that.
Mm.
We collect the tax for it, pass it on.
Okay.
ultimately, and if I want, the rest of the group wants to pursue that, I'm not opposed to it, I just think I'm just trying to express that I think it's a challenging political environment to pursue it, but, ultimately, number 4 though, is like, to me, the best option, because you remove yourself from all of the restrictions of state spending. You know, when you've got private funds at, you know, you get to determine how they're spent without restriction.
So what, currently we're
With the
spending
foundation.
138,000.
roughly.
If we took 40,000, which really isn't too much more than the 86. If we took 80,000 more. You went to 2 levy.
How much work is it gonna be to do the second option? Is it gonna be a lot of time on your part, or is that somewhere where we need to hire some kind of?
It would take our state legislator or senator to want to take that on. That would be the first battle. There would be some legal costs associated with that, just to make sure we got it
We had
right.
a conversation with them. Did you set up a conversation?
I have not. No, I have not pursued this option beyond this setting.
I guess I'd like to
And visiting with KSD about it.
think where you're headed.
I think we just have that conversation before we decide what to do.
Yeah.
See what the, I mean, give them some time to mull it over. I don't think it's something we throw at them and say, I need your, give them time to think it over. Like we've been able to think it for a while. I mean, I'm not sold on 100%, but you know, my first option, like Caroline, if the foundation's gonna take care of it overnight, I just love it, but.
Well, you have a combination. I mean, if the city would kick in a little more, and the foundation would kick in a little more, and, you know, even if you could increase it just $500,000, you know, that's gonna help a lot for the school.
I wish we had $500,000. I mean, that could be designated that, I mean,
Yeah, it's just too bad you can't do like you said. We came down, why can't we go use that somewhere else, but.
I think it'd be worth the option to explore it with them and see what the feel of it would be. And,
Mr. Rodder, before we make committee decisions, you might want to consider maybe a joint meeting between the Board of Education and the Education Foundation Board,
Okay.
just to make sure that they're on board with the ideas as well, since they are the actual controlling body of that fund.
So I haven't heard anything about option 1. Should I just cross that one off the list? Or,
I think for now, I think we should cross it off.
okay. And focus on 3 and 4 and see where you can gather more information on number 2. Sounds like.
Well, I mean, I don't want to take anything any more away from the library than what's already been done. You know, and that's when you start number 5, but I don't want to see anything taken away from the school either. So, I mean, we've got to do something to help ourselves, so we aren't cutting any more staff or class curriculum or, so, like Merlin said, we can't just sit here, we need to look forward and see
Well, I
what.
think the big thing is going to hit us in about 4 or 5 years. And I know that the engineer needs to be taken care of, that's just a chunk of change. And
So, I think we need to keep,
in order to
Making
keep the library
progress on-
modern too, you need to keep making it progressive. And I think the more that we can let the city and the patrons know the needs of the library and what's being done with it, the hours of operation, those kinds of things, the more that we are more visible with this kind of information, maybe people would buy into why we are thinking the way we are.
Mhm.
So with number 2, we're gonna set up a meeting with our representative and
I just have Josh set up and have a conversation with him if you could.
see what he said. And number 3, maybe talk to him and
You're on
let
their
him know
meeting,
what we're
meeting
thinking.
agenda.
I'm not yet.
I would
Um,
like to see that.
yeah, I will be.
That would be a good input, place to have input.
And then the
And
foundation.
then number 4, we'll set up a joint meeting with the foundation board.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay. Just see where it takes us.
It appears that there's funds there that we're maybe not utilizing, I don't know. I mean, on the surface, it looks that way.
Well, there are funds that we can use. Any revenue that they make, in fact, you could draw off the principal if you wanted to, say you want. I think if you request it, you can get it. The way
And that comes back
and-
to the fund agreement.
And so,
Because technically, those funds are owned by the South Central Education Foundation. Now, the fund agreement probably stipulates the terms by which you can request funds. But I bet when you think about the year-to-year 1099 reporting, those funds actually belong to South Central Community Foundation now. So there may be, the fund agreement will let us know what amount we can pull down. Whether if it's endowed, we couldn't.
I know they're not endowed. I'm almost another 10% sure that they're not endowed. 110% sure.
Wouldn't be a bad idea, check with the Old Bell Foundation and get some matching funds, so.
All right, good discussion. Ready to move on?
Yep.
Teacher evaluation.
With the, I'm trying to get this
So when that meeting?
The state is requiring all school districts to redesign their teacher evaluation process. Actually, teacher and school and district leader evaluation process. We need to have decisions made this year. There's a committee, Barb and Carolyn are part of that, and then we have some teachers and administrators on that. We'll be meeting, but this would be to give everybody an overview. We'll do the same thing with the staff, so everybody kind of understands where we're headed, has at least a basic understanding of what we're doing in the committee. We always have to go back to the purpose. Why bother with this? Why are we going to spend time doing this? What's the purpose of teacher evaluation? It all goes back to that chair over there. It makes a difference for the kids that sit in those chairs. It makes a difference. The teachers have the biggest impact on those kids. And improving instruction, improving what goes on in the classroom, improves the lives for those kids, what they learn. Todd Whitaker wrote, What Great Teachers Do Differently. He said there's 2 ways to improve a school. Get better teachers or improve the ones you have. And that's what this is about. Some research on, this is for reading. If you look at, if the school district is average, the actual school is average, and the teacher is average, the kid's average. He's performing at the 50th percentile. If you bump that teacher up a little bit and maybe is superior rather than just average, he's going to gain about 10 percentile points. If that teacher is excellent, it's going to be 20. Contrast that with if the school and district are both excellent but the teacher's still average, it's much less of a gain, even with the school and the district being excellent. So the teacher has a huge impact. It's even greater for math. You can see those gains for that. So what the teachers do really matters. Now, what is required with this? The guidelines from KSDE spell these things out. We have to use the evaluation for continual improvement in instruction. Have to use at least 3 performance levels. What happens if you just have 3? Not good, good, and really good. What's the tendency if you just have 3 levels? What's the tendency when you evaluate?
They put them in the middle or the top of probably.
Just pick the middle. If I'm not sure, I'll just pick the middle. So if you pick 4, on my evaluation, for instance, I want to see whether I'm in the top 2 or the bottom 2. So if we have 4, 4 is recommended. So you'll see on the systems that we're going to look at, they all have 4. Multiple measures, including student growth. This is going to be the tough one, which hasn't been determined yet with teacher evaluations. It has to include student growth as part of the teacher's evaluation. How are they improving in the classroom? Well, how do we gauge that? Tests. And that's a scary thing for us when we start saying, my evaluation is going to be based on how my kids do in the classroom. And that's a scary thing for a math teacher, but it's a little easier. How about the art teacher? How are we going to show that? There's not a state assessment in art. So that's going to come. The state's going to tell us how we do that. We don't know that now. Evaluate on a regular basis. The state statute sets that up in minimums, so we have to communicate that. That's something that's done anyway. Provide useful feedback and use to inform personnel decisions. We'll have to spell that out with our evaluations now. We don't say, how is this going to be used to measure and to make decisions. So the decision that we have to make as a district, by spring of this year, this school year, we need to determine, are we going to use the state's tool, that's the key, Kansas Educator Evaluation Protocol, or we're going to create our own, or use something else. We have to submit it for approval if it's not the state's form. In the year 14-15 school year, we have to have adopted a new system. So next year we don't have to, the following year we do. So we'll see where that takes us. The committee, we have 5 teachers. We started with 4, 2 in the elementary, 2 in the high school, but we added Mrs. Kinnaman as the local teachers association representative. So we still had one, I didn't meet with Mr. Bergen on where that other teacher was going to do that or not. And the 3 administrators and the 2 board members. That's our committee. Characteristics of effective evaluation, it needs to be data driven. We need to have data submitted. It's not just I go in the classroom and I see what's going on and write it down. That's not data, that's a part of data. But it needs to be based on evidence. You'll see some of this with rubrics, student achievement data, teacher can present things. That's effective evaluation. It's collaborative. It's not just me telling you how you've done and I move on the fly. It's equitable, allows for professional development. If I'm not doing well, how are we fixing that? And again, it's always focused on improvement. So some of the big ideas of typical of the past, to give you an example, my first year as principal, I evaluated a teacher that had been in district 31 years. Did her evaluation. She said, let me go get my first evaluation. Got it out from her first year in the district, 31 years prior, exact same evaluation tool. Now, education had changed a lot in 31 years. The way we evaluated those teachers did not change. How do you think that helped the teacher improve? It didn't. So, typical of the past, subjective. What we want to see is objective. 2 different principles evaluate, it's going to be the same thing. Some vague criteria, we'll see specific rubrics spelling it out, what we expect to see. Rather than saying this is how you're doing, we're going to look at improvement. It's going to be collaborative rather than just top down, and it's going to be a 2-way street. Here's our current evaluation form. This is the elementary form. There's 5 ratings: master, teacher, commendable, proficient, needs improvement, and unacceptable. And then there's these things here, these categories that are listed, and we give a rating and we give comments. Now, if I do this, if I evaluate Mrs. Falk and Mrs. Stiefkes evaluates Mrs. Falk, we may come up with different things here. We may be pretty close. But really what's going to drive this is the conversation that we have with her on, these are the things we want to see. There's nothing in here that tells me student discipline, what's commendable. Well, I might think she's doing a fantastic job and give her a 4, and Andrea may think she's doing a fantastic job and give her a 5. Or I may think she's doing horrible. And so there's nothing that drives that to say, this is what we want. If you look at this, how does that tell me how I use my resources? There's nothing in there. Can you imagine getting that as a teacher and saying, here's what I expect you to do? So that's what we're trying to get away from. Here's the junior senior high form. This allows for comments, and this is very similar to our administrator evaluation. It's just comments. Knowledge, what do we want to know? How are we grading them? So we can see we've got some work to do. I would say I'm not being critical of our system, but I am. It needs to improve. It honestly does. Here's an example of a rubric. It didn't come out real good from PC to Mac. So, but these will be. This is one of the systems we'll look at. I just wanted to blow this up so you can see it. Creating an environment of respect and rapport. What do we expect from the teachers? What does it look like? Well, in exemplary, highly respectful, genuine warmth. Students themselves are ensuring maintenance of high levels of civility. How is that different? Can I tell the difference between exemplary and proficient? Well, maybe the teacher's taking care of things here, but it doesn't have this. Are the students really doing it? Did they buy into it? Maybe I can see that. So the point isn't the respect part of that. It's you can see we should be able to, Stan and Josh should be able to go into the same room and get the same grade for the same teacher. So it's very objective. The law requires written evaluation of teachers. This is spelled out. The schedule, first year and second year teachers we evaluate twice a year by the 60th day. In the semester, years 3 and 4, we evaluate them once a year by February 15, and then 5 years and up. It's once every 3 years. Now we can evaluate as often as we need to. So the 3 systems we're going to look at is the Keep, McCrell, and then Danielson, Charlotte Danielson. These are research-based. Now when we're looking at research, what we're after, 2 words, reliability and validity. We want to know that the system is reliable, meaning it's measuring, it's objective. So this would be reliable, right? It's objective. We're all going to get the same grade for the same teacher, but it's not really right. Right? We're all hitting the same spot, but it's not on target. Valid would be, does it measure what we want it to measure? If I say I want teachers to be proficient in technology, well, is that what we want them to do? We could put that on the evaluation sheet, but that's not what I want them to do. I want them to effectively use it to instruct. So that would be an example of something that's not valid. So the research gets us validity, and then the rubric, the objectivity gives us reliable. So Charlotte Danielson wrote a book based on her research, and this is an example of one of the systems. She sets it up with 4 domains. Teaching practices. You have the planning, what goes on in the classroom, the actual instruction that happens in the classroom, and then the professional responsibilities. It's set up with 4 ratings, so they're all a little bit different. I don't think there's any magic to any of these. Unsatisfactory, basic, proficient, and exemplary. I think a lot with these wordings, teachers wouldn't be happy if we're there, and maybe somebody might think, well, that's okay, but there's improvement to be made. So there's kind of a little ambiguity in the basic. Andover School District uses this system. This is the process they go through. There's a pre-observation meeting, and there's a classroom observation. And back to those domains. When we evaluate teachers, we can't really evaluate. We can't sit with them while they plan, or we don't sit with them while they make a lesson plan and evaluate that. We see it in the classroom. So when we go into the classroom and watch, really we're just evaluating those 2. We're not evaluating their preparation or the professional responsibilities. Some of those things become evident, but when we observe in the classroom, we're looking at those 2 domains. Then we meet afterwards, and then artifacts are submitted. Teacher has the opportunity to submit a lesson plan, submit things they've done for professional development. If there's something you graded me on bad last time, then I'm going to show you what I did to improve on that this time, and maybe my evaluation is better. So the things we can't observe can be submitted, additional observations, and then a conference that says how we've done. Even if you're not being evaluated, there's a plan. You want to do this one?
Sure,
All right.
that's fine.
Just slide through.
Okay. This is the KEEP. This is the one that the state put together. And this is one that we could adopt, and since it's what the state put together, the state would, I'm guessing, approve it. If you really get into the conversations that are going on out there, you know, some people love it, some people hate it, some people say, no, the state that's not going to keep it. And we could talk about that for a long, long time. But there are a lot of similarities between this and what Mr. Meyer just talked about with the Danielson plan. 3 basic components, and again, we're redoing evaluations not just for teachers, but for principals and superintendents as well. And you can see that a lot of people have weighed in on the KEEP, including KNEA. And KNEA thinks this is a good deal, so I think that speaks well if we've got people at the state and teachers' unions agreeing that this is good for teachers, this is good for kids. And again, here's the philosophy behind KEEP. Evaluation should be continuous. Everybody who's in this business wants to get better. If you don't, you need to get out. Everybody wants to get better. Good teachers want to get better. Great teachers want to get better. And that's part of the philosophy behind these things. And here are the components of the KEEP. I don't know, do you have, how deep do you want me to get into this? Do you have questions on this? And you can see similarities again. How are our teachers planning? How are our principals planning? How are we assessing what we got done? How are we instructing? Changing instruction based on the learner. And how are we growing? How is that really good teacher still growing, still getting better? And how are we working together? And so the process, self-reflection, we think about how we're doing, and then talk with someone else. How are we doing? We're going to talk about those things. We're going to determine our goals. How are we going to get those things done? What do we want to see? If you're a teacher, what do you want to see in your kids? And how are you going to make that happen? As a principal, what do I want to see in my building, in all those kids? How am I going to make that happen? And then the observations. More observations than we're used to. More conversations than we're used to. Again, it becomes more of a collaborative process. It really will make us sit down and take the time to get into what's going on in that classroom. It forces a deeper conversation of instruction. It forces a deeper conversation of what is your goal in this room, and how can I make you find the resources you need to make that goal happen. How can I help you? And then data. Lesson plans, student work, communication, the assessments with student feedback, all of these kinds of things that let us look back and say, okay, yeah, you had a great idea, you got it on paper, you delivered, the kids learned it. And that's what we want to see.
The question I have with the evaluations, you said there had to be 2 different types of assessments. Well, what if you have a class, you know, just like, for example, an elementary class, the teacher only has them 1 year. So are you going to have a pre-test before the school year starts, and a post-test when the school year ends for evaluation? And is that used on the evaluation
is that type of evaluation. So how do you measure increase in a low achieving class?
Yeah, I don't know, and that question has yet to be answered. There's a commission that within the State Department of Education that they put together that will be determining how do we determine student growth.
And that's subjective, isn't it? To some degree, because in a school our size, it's hard to measure things outside the realm of, say you have a class of 10.
Yeah.
You cannot statistically,
Averages don't work well here.
it just doesn't work.
And one kid is
It's skewed.
5% of your class, yeah. So that's the big question. The other system, very similar to the other ones. Let me back up here real quick. Here's going to be some of the sticking point to some of this. 3 to 5 informal and 3 formal observations. That's asking a lot more of administrators to get in the classrooms and be there a lot. Now, I think we're all committed to getting in there as much as we can, but that will be a big hang-up across the state, especially in a school where you have 65 teachers that you have to supervise, and half of them need to be evaluated this year. That's a big job in itself. Important, but mid-continent research for education and learning. And do a lot of research, and a lot of things come out of there. Very similar, just the way they set these up is different, the research that's gone into it. So I'm not going to go through all of this here with you, but it's all very similar. They have 5 standards here. And then they use process components. So they all have their own vocabulary. Very similar here with 3 observations and professional development plan. So you can see they're all very collaborative. Here's kind of a comparison. InTask is Interstate Teacher Assessment Support Consortium. They did research on what good teaching is. So that's, we didn't see any of these, but all these are based on that research. So Danielson has the domains, the Keep has the constructs, is that the right word? Anyway, McCrell has the standards. So they all kind of match up and fit together. So what now? The committee will meet and study options. There's going to be some costs associated with this. We've looked at anyway within our My Learning Plan system. It's how we track our professional development. There's a system there where we can input our own evaluation process. I can go in with my phone and in a 5-minute walkthrough, and we can keep track of those things. We can chart data if we want to see who's using technology, for instance, and we can look at over the year where we're using technology. So there will be some costs, but it'll be a good thing for us in the end if we can get this process online. The goal would be to have a recommendation by February. We need to have a decision made whether we're using Keep or using something else. So the Teachers Association and the board will both decide on that committee's recommendation in early March. And we could implement next year, which if we've done the work and looked at it, we might as well. But we'll have to decide that also. And then by 14, 15, we'll have to have it done. So, any questions on that? Yep.
Is there a meeting?
I haven't scheduled one yet.
Okay, added agenda items, computer purchases.
We do have the wireless system up and running and working. I did not want to buy any wireless equipment like our iPads until I knew that was up and running. So now the goal will be to get some iPads into the district and see where we go. There's a lot of nuts and bolts things on the, whether we need a keyboard, what kind of cover do we need, the apps when we buy those, what kind of budget do we have to have for that. Merlin asked me when we got here, what about insurance? So there's a lot of those things that need to be answered. The quote I showed you, or that's in your packet, for $26,000, it's for 50 iPads. That would be, the goal would be for every teacher that wants one, and we'll use one to get one, and then a cart that we can share in the district. So we can take it from classroom to classroom and use that. So between keyboards and extra cords and all those things, I can do this on a state contract, so we don't have to do a formal bid process. So what I'm asking for is not to exceed $35,000. That would get us what we need, and of course, and again, that would be on a state bid contract. We'd be assured we're getting the best price.
Pages that I signed, I know it was
I'm sorry, I didn't put the page numbers. 23 is the page number.
Before Andrea.
You said not to exceed 35, what were you spending other than the 26?
Keyboards, covers,
Okay.
cords,
So about 9 to 10,000.
Oh, well, okay.
yeah, and maybe some
I have
more
Linda
iPads.
supporting documents
I
that I
mean, I'm guessing it's not gonna be over 30, but I want a little leeway in case.
While we're talking about it, is there any rules or anything for students bringing their own iPads to school and utilizing those?
No, we have,
I mean, would that be
We need a-
encouraged, or would that be discouraged, or?
it needs to be determined, I think.
We have, sorry to
Yeah,
interject,
you're fine.
I have some students that have like Kindles, Kindle Fires, you know, those kinds of things that they're reading on, and, you know, I say it's at your own risk to bring that piece of expensive equipment to school, but parents understand that, kids understand it, and they have them here and are reading on them, and so far, we haven't had any problems with that, but it's, you know, it is an expensive little thing to have in your backpack.
I'm not sure how it's covered in our policy. I'll need to look. I know some schools have a BYOD, bring your own device, policy where, you know, you can bring whatever you need. That's kind of a change in thinking.
All our students sign a internet use policy, is that correct?
You're gonna have to answer that for me. Do they sign a use policy at enrollment?
It's in the planner for 7-12. Now, 5 and 6, I think we just have a piece of paper. They are not on the internet a whole awful lot, so. But yeah, that's definitely something to think about when you get tidied up.
Right.
Mr. President, I move the board approve the purchase of iPads not to exceed $35,000.
Second.
Been moved and second to approve the purchase of iPads of cost not to exceed $35,000. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, right hand. Opposed, same sign. Carries 6-0. Next item, KASB Convention Delegate. At this time, hasn't been anybody expressed that they wanted to go to that. Is there anybody that wants to attend the annual convention in Topeka on November 30th through December 2nd?
Do you have a copy of the agenda in your area there?
I am not planning to attend.
And you don't have to decide today.
Are you planning to go?
Tentatively, yes.
But if we do have somebody that's going to be there, we need to approve them as a delegate or appoint them as a delegate.
Have to be in Manhattan, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, or you're all good.
This year, isn't it?
One thing about the first, K-State has a home game, you can bus down to Manhattan, go to the game.
Can it be any committee
It could be
members
anybody.
if they decide to go.
We could have a motion that should someone,
Or we can put alternates too.
yeah, any board member, allow the president to appoint anybody that plans to attend or appoint. We would
Yeah.
take that, or-
And maybe we don't even want to vote. Even if you go. Both board members are duly elected.
I mean,
Is there, is,
So just
what's,
designate
we're not
all
like
board members
voting or
as a
anything on
delegate.
behalf of the board, is there a board motion that is required for someone to attend a conference?
Not to attend, this would be for the delegate assembly.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
there's
we
that.
have a
okay.
vote
Just
on the
delegates.
assembly, yeah.
No, to attend that, like,
Yeah,
as a delegate assembly
yeah.
person.
This would only be to
If
vote.
anybody plan on going to that meeting, and if not, then we don't need to even have one. It's just to approve policies and. I don't think there's anything controversial going on at this point.
Just money.
I've been there and they fought over words for hours.
I don't know, KSB kind of makes me want to pull my hair out anyway.
Yeah.
I feel like probably should be.
No one's planning, we won't need to do that, so. If you do plan to attend, think you want to go, and I would strongly encourage if you get the last minute one to, just talk to the district office and, because there is a few things that are neat to hear about. The new things that schools are experiencing, especially in the face of social media and how to address those issues with staff. And the other thing is you talk to other board members across the state, you really get a feel of how things are being handled, what they experience and so forth. So it is a good thing to attend. I think I've gone to it. All right, if there's nothing there, we'll move on to communications and we'll begin with elementary principal.
And my report is on page 24, I believe. Music concert was well attended, and Mrs. Cornwell definitely exemplified the show must go on. She was not feeling well, but kids did a great job, and I thought the audience really responded to it very well. And teachers, staff, everybody pitches in. It's a great group effort. Here at teacher conferences, we had 89% of our students represented at conferences, and since then we had a couple others come, afterwards for conferences. So we were over 90%, which I think that's pretty impressive. We're getting ready for state assessments. 3rd through 6th graders take state assessments, and so that initial information is uploaded to KSDE so teachers can give formative assessments and make sure that their kids are prepared to work with that interface of state assessments, and that we've got those indicators down. October did see quite a few student assistance teams initiated for kids. Fire prevention programming was provided by Stafford County EMS for our pre-K through 4th grades, and they did a great job. Kids always enjoy that. Some very good information was presented. The Wichita Mid-American All-Indian Center presented a jingle dancer programming for our 1st through 6th graders, and again, that was a neat experience for our kids. And Mrs. Snyder told me this was the first time that they had come outside of Wichita to provide that programming, so that was really neat. Mrs. Snyder and Mrs. Binky were really integral in getting that programming here for our kids. Lisa did let me know that 87 attendees were at the family safety night tonight, where there was free supper and then several different safety stations. Stafford County EMS indicated that a lot of our kids, when asked where they should go for a fire, said the basement. And so they came and talked about that with parents and kids again. tonight. Thought that was really important, that we're really clear with our children that tornadoes and fires are different, and we need to know where to go in both those situations. So anyway, the family safety night was grant funded. We did have some other teachers receive South Central Kansas Community Foundation, the nice $100 classroom grants. Gail Cornwell received one, and Jolene Frank received one. I did have a lot of teachers apply, and I'm proud of that. We've broken that barrier, and we'll keep applying, and hopefully more and more will be granted those in the future. We lost a kindergartner since October, but I took a phone call last week, and I am expecting a new kindergartner sometime this week, so hopefully I'll be back to 152, holding steady there. Bring a parent to lunch day. We actually celebrated over 2 weeks' time, and I had 81 non-school personnel adults and 4 younger siblings attend over that 2-week period. And a lot of thank yous to secretarial staff, cafeteria staff, teachers. It took a lot of people to pull that off, and I thought it went really, really well. And some good, just a good PR thing. Got a lot of people in our building eating lunch with their kids. And quite a few went out to recess too, so that was kind of fun. Site Council, PTO met November 1st. Right now, they are focused on how to make improvements to the playground. So they're working on coming up with plans to present at some point and gathering information, so we're ready to apply for grants, looking for appropriate grants, that kind of thing. That's where they're working right now. Our next meeting will be before the board meeting in December, 6 p.m. We've been meeting upstairs in the library, so please, if you want to come early, join us upstairs in the library. That would be great. And my elementary building team will meet November 15th. And we're looking at needs and goals, and then once we get those set, we'll talk about how to address needs and pursue goals. Any questions for me?
Thank you very much.
Andrea, while you're here,
Yes.
I've got our board goal number 5. We're going to preschool.
Yes.
I'm going to share with the group where we're at on that.
Okay. It seems like the story is getting longer and longer and longer. But I will say I think I've learned a lot about Head Start and demonstrative learning communities, which is changing its name to early learning communities. Our district is a part of the Greater Stafford County Head Start, which is housed in Stafford. But the way those big grants are written, USD 350 kids, are already written into that. So us, USD 350, pursuing that as just us doesn't really work. There's going to be a house for Head Start in Stafford County, and Stafford has gotten that in place, organized it, maintained it, and that's where it needs to stay. Really, and Mr. Meyer, please correct me if I'm wrong, it seemed like our greater pursuit of that as just us really wouldn't create more preschool opportunities for children in Stafford County. It might just move those opportunities around. That's really not accomplishing anything for our little ones here in Stafford County. We don't need to move things around, we need more. And so that option is really kind of off the
Is it
table.
fair to say that would create a lot of duplicative administration responsibility as well?
With Head Start, yes, and they won't. almost certain they won't go there. They won't establish a Head Start center here and in Stafford. And the other side of that coin is that federal funding, which is how Head Start is funded, is not looking good, so.
Are there limits to their student population and qualifications?
Yes, it's income qualifications for Head Start.
So,
And there is a waiting list. I mean, there are kids eligible for Head Start now that there's not room for here in Stafford County.
The state provides funding for 4-year-old at-risk program, which is based on income of the family. And then there's a pre-K pilot program. We don't have either of those. Our hope of getting those is nil right now unless they add more dollars into those programs. But the special ed cooperative has some pre-K pilot program slots that they can spread throughout the cooperative. So we're pursuing whether we can get some of those. And I don't know if that's an option. Also, within adding another section, getting the help of the cooperative and how we can do that. It will require district dollars to make that happen.
well, if we had just a public, non-special ed, and integrated it in that people pay to come to the preschool, like, could we do anything like that?
Yes, yeah, I think that's absolutely an option. What I don't want to do is I don't want to have a special ed kids are over here and a non-special ed kids are over here. We keep them separate. So working with the cooperative, so we have all the kids intermixed.
I know Casey works for Mays, and all the early childhood is in one building, but they all, intermingle.
Right, and that's what we want, yeah.
So to get to that involves, would it be another would it be another teacher that has a morning and an afternoon, or?
Or maybe half a day, I don't know. And the co-op, they have numbers somewhere, or they're working on getting us how many kids we turned away this year. That wouldn't be all of the kids that we could serve, but that would give us an indication of need right off the bat. So we're working on it.
We've gathered a lot of data.
With a lot of help. So, a lot of people really want to see some more options for our little ones here, so.
Okay, Mr. Bergen's report is on the fifth. Are we going to review that?
Yeah, I don't really have a lot of information here. Parent-teacher conferences, same thing. Scholars Bowl and junior high basketball have started. Play is this weekend, if you can get out for that. 7th grade students, the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium, with the change in our curriculum with the Common Core, there's also a change in assessments. The Smarter Balanced Assessment is one of those. ACT is working on something, and then there's another group working on something. We don't know where we're going with this. I was under the assumption that this Smarter Balance was what we were doing. That's not the correct assumption. So, but anyway, they're doing a field study with their new assessment, and our 7th graders participated in that, and it's quite a bit different. To give you an example, the math assessment that the 7th graders were doing, one of the questions said something like, Susie says to change the temperature from Fahrenheit to Celsius, you multiply by 2 and add 30. Explain why this is an okay, or tell whether you think this is a good method to estimate the temperature outside, or if it's a good method to estimate the temperature in an oven. And that's the math question. And so it's a lot different than what we're used to in choose A, B, C, or D, which is a good thing. And I think Mrs. Pound was in there giving that assessment. Maybe it scared her to death, but it's a lot different. So it was kind of neat to see that, and I'm sure I violated copyright laws by taking a picture of some of the questions on my phone. But
We'll never tell.
high school volleyball team, as you know, was second in state, and the football team won their district. Finished a great season. So, Mr. Bergen is at the KSDE Principals Association Conference today and tomorrow, and we're going to do the activity fund.
Your report?
Okay, I've got a lot on here, so I'll try to be brief. Stop me if you have questions. Quickly, I want to show you the administrator evaluation tool. It was very similar to what we looked at before, but some research, and we've discussed this as administrators in our meetings. Previously, what the grade portion there, personal qualities and performance, that's just listed and I provide comments for them. So that's the evaluation. How are you doing with your staff relationships? There's no information there for me to provide and gauge what's expected. I added all these other things in there from some research that we've discussed. There's a lot there. I may not grade them on everything, but we've added that additional information in there based on what we know works. So working to improve that for this year. We'll have to adjust that for next year with the changes in the evaluation system. Professional development, Carolyn was here in October and presented some stuff about economic development, and as that came along and tied in Common Core, problem-based learning, and had some really good conversations with staff. November 9, we're focused on Common Core. That's our big focus for the year. We have to be there. And next semester, with this evaluation process and new technology, and continuing with our Common Core. I'm going to try to have each goal on here and present something related to what we're doing. With Goal 2, our advanced course options, we're really in the exploration phase right now. Let me stop real quick. Did you need to leave? I'm sorry. She had a long day.
I'm okay.
You need to sneak out. Go
Okay,
ahead.
okay, thank you.
A lot of this will come with online learning. With Senate Bill 155, we've talked about that before. If a kid gets a credential in a career and technical education, gets a certificate, we get $1,000 when they graduate. Also, they have free college tuition for those career and technical education courses. Tough thing about that is if we're going to transport a kid up to Great Bend, what class is that kid not going to take so he can do that because of the hour of transportation? So that becomes difficult in our situation. So a lot of that might be online learning, and Mr. Bergen and I have been visiting about where we might have an online learning lab, and he was visiting with some vendors today. But there's some definite possibilities there. Goal number 4, the career and post-secondary education. Lisa Cornwell and Andy Hacker are working with the students on career planning and planning out their 4 years of high school and what they want to do down the road. There will be a lot more on this with our Common Core. Goal number 5 we just discussed. Improving technology, I mentioned to you. We got the wireless done. Our desktops are not ready to go yet, but with the iPads, training is going to be key. We're going to get the tools in, but we need to know how to use them and use them effectively. So that's where we are on that. We're making headway. Enhanced facilities and grounds. Formed a district leadership team. We have not met yet. Mrs. Siefke's mentioned the playground. Christy Snyder and Mr. Cooper were part of that Prairie Garden. Anybody
Mrs.
else?
Binky?
And Mrs. Binky. We'll be looking at some grants for, to incorporate that into our improvements in the grounds. And skip down to the grant opportunities, the Lowe's and the Owls grant. Lowe's provides funds for facility improvements, playgrounds or landscaping, things like that. The Owls, the Outdoor Wildlife Learning Site, that might be part of the Prairie Garden project. And I believe that's Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks that provides that. So, looking at some of those things. A lot of that, the rest of that is just day-to-day work. Legislative update, you may have heard, you should have, because I sent to you on Friday night. The efficiency study, Bob, you referred to that a little bit ago with that 65%, the governor says that the law says 65% of the state aid must be spent in the classroom for instruction. The law doesn't say it has to be that way. That's the goal. The tough thing is, how do we define what's a classroom expense, and what research says 65% is what it needs to be to make it happen. It's going to be different here than it is in Stanton County, where their district is a lot bigger than ours, and their transportation expense is a lot higher. So our district is not quite 65% on just instruction, but instruction and instructional support were about 68% the last 2 years. There's surveys. The governor has a survey out there where people can go online and anonymously point out inefficiencies in school operations. There's also a site that you can submit information on what your district has done to be more efficient, and how have the cuts in state aid hurt us. KASB has their own committee. It's been kind of a joke with the Efficiency Study Committee that there wasn't a single educator a part of that, which is tough to analyze how school budgets work when you don't have a single school district official on there. They did appoint a fairly new superintendent to that committee. I know of him, but he's not an experienced guy by any means. That's not to say he's not great. But. The property tax issue is something that's been in the works the last couple of years. There's no bill now, but it's the property tax transparency proposal from the governor. Basically what that says, if the valuation in your district goes up, then either your mill levy needs to come down, or you need to have a public vote to raise the budget with that valuation. These two things are frustrating on the local level, because if we're worried about big government, we don't want the state government telling our local governments how to do things, and that's what these two issues are doing. They're telling the local governments what they can and can't do. We are a local control state, and I think most people take pride in that. So whether that includes school districts and community colleges, I don't know. I think previous bills did excluded schools from that, because your 20 mills is levied for the general fund by state statute, so we can't change that. The bullying, I'm going to wait till next meeting to bring that up. The Affordable Care Act, I'm going to wait till Wednesday before we really talk about what's going to happen there, because frankly that will depend on the election, how that comes out and what will happen. If Obama wins the election, then they'll move forward with the bill and everything that goes along with it. And if Romney wins, there's a lot of uncertainty of what will be kept and what will be changed, and we don't know. So I did attend a meeting on the 18th of October. We're in pretty good shape here on coverage for our employees. The more difficult thing will be for our special ed co-op. The insurance they offer for their classified employees is not very good. They don't pay
They pay little, if any, of that. So if they have to cover more folks, their costs go up, and we pay for that. So locally, I think we're good, but we may have an issue with the co-op. The grant opportunities, the Win for Schools, the grant was applied for. I talked to at ESDAC, who was a part of that last time, about reapplying for that. So I'll be bringing more information to you when they open that grant up. And then the 21st Century Community Learning Center grant, they provide funds for after-school programs. And Andrea, you've looked into that more than I have as of now. You want to share?
It's pretty extensive, but yeah, after school, extended learning opportunities, weekends. I mean, it really just, any way you're gonna give kids more time with qualified people. That's what it's for. Yeah, the turnaround date is pretty fast. It's due in December, but luckily Lisa Cornwell's pretty knowledgeable about it. She helped write the one that Stafford got.
That's for their STARS program. Are we talking the same thing or something different? Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I've visited with some people. We've got some good ideas about things that we'd like to see happen. You know, I think it's definitely worth having some deep conversations quickly. And if we're going to pursue it, we've got to get on it. So.
And how long is that? Is that a 5-year program?
5
You have to
years.
re-up?
Well, 5 years of funded, and then you've got to sustain after that. Yeah, that's the part that's kind of scary to me, but I emailed Lisa that was the part I was worried about, and she emailed right back, oh, no, you can do this. I was like, okay. And she's got someone who's got ideas on how we can make it work. So, anyway, and we've got a lot of community people to partner with, so I'm feeling fairly positive about it.
All right, board member reports. Start with Bill. Tom.
I don't have anything, I don't think.
Barb.
Pretty quiet.
Carolyn.
Just, I want to commend the faculty I've seen do a great job in all the things I've attended this week, or this month, from the elementary school program, or the music program and lunch. I thought it was good to firsthand see what school lunch is like, given all of the political uproar that you hear about school lunch. So, anyway, did that a couple of times.
Were you gonna
Yeah,
comment?
did you have your own opinion?
Things haven't changed as much as people seem to think that they have. Would be mine. They looked a whole lot like they did 40 years ago. But no, it was good balanced meal. There was one other thing. Oh, I've noticed a lot of activity at the Annex building, and it looks like there's some neat learning opportunities that are being pursued there in conjunction with the extension program that are giving some of our teachers the opportunity to collaborate. This looks like a good, looks like productive activity, I guess, is what I see. So, and appreciated the support on the PDC day.
I just had a question for Tom. Was he inbounds or out of bounds, and do you have a picture of it?
In my opinion, he was out of bounds. From my angle, he was out of bounds. Yep.
Okay, I just wondered. Thanks, Tom.
Anything else, Dan?
No.
I attended the special ed co-op meeting, and our meeting was held at Haskins Learning Center down there. And if you haven't been down there, sometime you ought to stop in. They've really renovated that place, and a lot of really good stuff. I would say that it's, the staff down there is just really doing a good job of incorporating things. And, I think one of the big things is what do they have on the north side? I can't think of what the term is for the learning goes in their job preparation.
I don't know.
Oh, it's more like school to work type, where kids get preparing them for the job.
Talking about the transition.
Yeah,
stuff.
transition. They're trying to get a lot more people involved in that. But really, kind of impressed with that facility. I think it's gonna be a good move. I know it's good move. Other than that, everything's just pretty much the same. Run pretty smooth at this point. So that's all I have. So we'll move on to executive session. And how long will your call take?
20 minutes?
All
of it.
All of it? Let's start with 20 minutes. And, I have the first 5 of that. Do we need Andre for any of that?
No, don't need, no.
You may not
The information
take 5
for the
minutes.
elementary position.
I'll entertain a motion for 20 minutes of executive session for personnel.
Mr. President, I'll move the board go into executive session for the purpose of discussing personal matters in order to protect the privacy of non-elected personnel. And that they return to open session in 20 minutes in this room.
Moving second, during executive session for 20 minutes, anybody take a break? All in favor, right hand, pose same sign, 6-0.
I just rolled basketball.
Moving second to hire Chad Freeze, assistant high school boys basketball coach. Any discussion? All in favor, right hand, pose same sign, 6-0. We have some resignations.
Yeah, I need a motion to approve the resignation of Clint Kinnaman as junior high football coach.
Entertain a motion for that.
Mr. President, I move we approve the resignation of Clint Kinnaman as junior high football coach.
Second.
Moving second to approve Clint Kinnaman's resignation from junior high football coach position. Any discussion? All in favor, right hand, pose same sign, 6-0.
I need a motion to approve the resignation of Luke Snyder as instructional aide.
Mr. President, I move we accept the resignation of Luke Snyder as instructional aide.
I'll second that.
And moving second to approve the resignation of Luke Snyder from instructional aide position. Any discussion? All in favor, right hand, pose same sign, 6-0.
And I need a motion to approve the hiring of Lindsay Lutman for the instructional aide position.
Mr. President, I move we accept the application of Lindsay Lutman, and approve the hiring, I guess, is what
Second motion.
And seconded to approve the hiring of Lindsay Lutman for instructional aide. Any discussion? All in favor, right hand, pose same sign, 6-0. We're on a roll, you have any more?
No?
Mr. President, I move we adjourn.
Motion to adjourn,
Second.
moving second to adjourn. Is there any discussion, any future agenda items?
High school work release requests and capital outlay improvements, maybe next month. If the agenda stays light, we'll take a tour and point out some things and have some discussion.
Okay.
Great. Great discussion this evening. All in favor of adjournment, right hand. Pose same sign, and we're adjourned.